Denied access to banks and insurers, African American communities built their own institutions. Despite facing substantial obstacles, the journey was one of triumph and challenge. Their impact endured, shaping the fight for economic justice and civil rights. Join us as we delve into the legacy of African American economic empowerment, fraternal organizations, and the lessons it holds for today.
Right. Let's jump into a topic that I think is really going to get us thinking. We're going to be looking at Black economic empowerment after Reconstruction. And specifically, how even with intense discrimination, Black communities built their own really incredible systems of finance and support. And we're going to have some fascinating stories to dig into. I mean, we're talking Frederick Douglass's work with banks.
Oh, wow.
The impressive reach of groups like the Mosaic Templars, and even the kind of dramatic rise and fall of the True Reformers Bank, which I think has some really powerful lessons for us.
Yeah. You know what really fascinates me about this whole topic is that it goes beyond, just simple dollars and cents. We're really going to uncover how Black communities, against some incredible odds, really forged their own path to success and created this whole ecosystem that empowered them.
Okay, so you said ecosystem. Help me unpack that a little bit. What did this actually look like on the ground?
Okay, so picture this. We've got this hope for equality after the Civil War. But then it gets met with the harsh reality of Jim Crow laws. Black communities find themselves basically systematically shut out of this financial world that white America controls. Denied basic services, even something as fundamental as life insurance.
Wow.
And you can imagine the fear and the uncertainty that created for families who are just trying to build a future.
Yeah, when you put it like that, it makes the need for some kind of alternative system just so obvious.
Exactly. And that's where the ingenuity comes in. Faced with this exclusion, Black communities, they didn't just, sit around and wait for things to change. They took charge. They created their own banks, insurance companies, even healthcare providers. It was this really powerful demonstration of self-reliance, fueled by this belief that economic independence was actually the key to true freedom.
So it's almost like they were forced into becoming these pioneers just to meet their community's most basic needs.
In a way, yes. It was about survival, absolutely. But it was also about more than that. It was about control. Control over their own destiny, building a system that reflected their values and aspirations.
So let's get into some specifics here. We found several organizations that really stood out to us in our research. And first up, I want to talk about Capital Savings Bank, founded back in 1888. Now, I know Frederick Douglass was involved with this one, which already tells you was a big deal.
Absolutely. Having someone like Douglass, a towering figure of the time, as a founder gave Capital Savings Bank instant credibility and symbolic weight. It demonstrated to the world that Black communities weren't just capable of managing their own financial institutions, but that they could excel at it.
And this was right alongside another big one, the True Reformers Bank, also founded in 1888. Now, what struck me about them was that they were independently chartered, which feels significant, but I'll admit I don't fully grasp all the implications of that.
Yeah, that's a key point. Because back then, getting a bank charter wasn't easy for anyone, let alone a Black-owned institution in this, racially hostile environment.
Right.
So securing an independent charter was a monumental achievement. It meant operating outside the control of this white-dominated financial system. It was a bold statement of self-determination. But it also meant navigating this complex legal and financial landscape with very little precedent to guide them.
Wow. So that context makes their story even more impressive. But it also makes their eventual collapse in 1910 all the more tragic, right?
It's a cautionary tale for sure. It reminds us that even the most ambitious ventures can be fragile, especially when they're operating within a system that is designed to undermine them.
So we've got this drive for self-reliance, but also these huge obstacles in the way. Were there any groups that managed to sort of break through and achieve a level of success that surprised even you?
The Mosaic Templars are a fantastic example of that. Their reach went far beyond what many would have thought possible at the time, extending all the way to the Caribbean.
I got to admit, when I first read that, I was like, the Caribbean. Seriously, it just seems so ambitious, especially given the challenges they were facing at home.
Yeah, it speaks to a vision that went beyond just survival. They saw economic empowerment as this global movement, a way to uplift not just their local community, but Black people throughout the diaspora.
Okay, now that is inspiring. It makes you wonder what they could have achieved if they hadn't faced so much resistance.
Right. And they weren't the only ones pushing boundaries. Don't forget about the Colored Farmers Alliance. Their work organizing Black farmers to demand fair wages and prices.
Yeah.
Resonates even today, especially with the rise of modern labor movements.
I can see why you called all of this an ecosystem earlier. It wasn't just about individual organizations, but how they all interconnected, right?
Yeah.
Like they were creating this whole parallel world of support and opportunity.
Precisely. And what's remarkable is that this wasn't limited to urban areas. The Colored Farmers Alliance, for instance, had a profound impact on rural communities across the South, where Black farmers were often at the mercy of exploitative landowners and merchants.
Okay, so I'm starting to get a feel for the breadth of this movement. We've got banks, insurance companies, healthcare providers, even farmers' alliances, all working towards this idea of economic self-sufficiency. But were there any common threads? Any shared philosophies that kind of tied it all together?
One of the most powerful themes you see throughout this era is the emphasis on fraternal organizations. These were groups that combined social, economic, and often spiritual aims, creating a tight-knit community that extended far beyond just business dealings.
You know, I've heard that term before, but I've never really thought about what it meant in practice. Can you give me an example?
Take the Order of the True Reformers, for instance. They weren't just a bank. They were a community hub offering everything from life insurance and healthcare to education and even retirement homes.
Wow, they really were living up to their name, weren't they?
Oh.
Reforming the whole way people live their lives.
Exactly. It was about creating a system of mutual support where people could rely on each other, not on institutions that often sought to exploit them.
That idea of mutual support, of building something together, it's incredibly powerful. It makes you wonder what we can learn from this era, especially in today's world where so many people feel isolated and disempowered.
Absolutely. The stories we're uncovering here offer valuable lessons about the power of collective action and the importance of building systems that prioritize people over profit.
And you know, it's not just about historical lessons. These themes of self-reliance, community resilience, the fight for economic justice, they're all incredibly relevant today, aren't they?
Without a doubt, these stories resonate with anyone who has ever felt marginalized or excluded from the mainstream. They remind us that true progress often comes from the ground up, from people coming together to create their own solutions.
Okay, so we've seen the need, we've seen the innovation, and we've seen some early successes, at least on a smaller scale. But I'm guessing it wasn't all smooth sailing, right? What kind of challenges did these organizations face as they tried to grow and expand their impact?
That's where things get even more interesting. Because as we dig deeper, we'll see that the story of Black economic empowerment after Reconstruction is also a story of resilience in the face of incredible adversity. It's a story of triumphs, but also of setbacks and hard-won lessons.
Okay, I am hooked. Let's dive into those challenges and see what we can learn.
I think one of the biggest hurdles right off the bat was just the economic reality of the time. You know, we were talking about right after the Civil War, a period of just immense instability and upheaval. And then on top of that, you add in the deliberate efforts to just undermine Black economic progress.
Yeah, it almost feels like they were set up to fail right from the start.
It wasn't easy, that's for sure. I mean, they were often denied loans, faced with these discriminatory interest rates, had limited access to capital, and these were challenges that persisted for decades.
And I imagine even when they did manage to kind of get some momentum going, there were forces working against them. Or like, what about just outright racism and prejudice?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, discrimination wasn't just limited to the financial world. Black-owned businesses often face boycotts, vandalism, even violence.
Yeah.
And then you've got the legal system, which was often stacked against them.
So you've got this combination of economic barriers and outright hostility. It makes you wonder how any of these organizations survived at all.
It's a testament to their determination and resilience. They had to be incredibly resourceful and innovative just to stay afloat.
Earlier, we talked about the True Reformers Bank and how they ultimately collapsed. Can you walk me through what happened there? It felt like such a promising venture, and then boom, it's gone.
Yeah, their story is both inspiring and heartbreaking. They achieved so much in a short period of time, but they also made some crucial missteps. Part of it was poor management, you know, maybe being a little too ambitious too quickly. But it was also external factors, like the financial panic of 1907, which hit Black-owned banks particularly hard.
So it's kind of this combination of internal and external factors.
Yeah.
Like this perfect storm that they just couldn't weather.
Exactly. And their collapse had this ripple effect throughout Black communities. You know, it eroded trust in financial institutions and made it even harder for future ventures to succeed. It's a stark reminder of how precarious economic progress can be.
It makes me think about that old saying, it's hard to build something, but easy to destroy it. But even in the face of these setbacks, I'm sensing a but coming.
Oh, there's always a but in history, isn't there? Because what's remarkable is that even though the True Reformers Bank failed, their story didn't end there. Their legacy lived on in the lessons learned by those who came after them.
That's so important to remember. Failure doesn't always mean the end. Sometimes it's just a stepping stone.
Yeah, think of it as this process of trial and error. Each setback, each failure, provided valuable insights for future generations. They learned from the mistakes of the past, adapted their strategies, and continued to push for economic empowerment.
Okay, so we've talked about some of the struggles, but let's not forget about the triumphs. Because despite all the challenges, these organizations did achieve some incredible things, right?
Without a doubt, they built institutions that served their communities for generations. They created opportunities for Black people to build wealth and gain financial independence. And they laid the groundwork for the civil rights movement that would come later.
That last part is really intriguing. What's the connection between this early economic empowerment movement and the fight for social and political equality?
Well, they're inextricably linked. Economic power gives you a voice. It gives you leverage. It gives you the ability to challenge the status quo. So when Black communities built their own banks, insurance companies, and businesses, they weren't just creating wealth. They were creating a foundation for social change.
So it wasn't just about money. It was about power. The power to shape their own destinies.
Precisely. And that's why you see groups like the NAACP and the Urban League emerging in the early 20th century, building on the groundwork laid by these earlier economic empowerment efforts. They understood that the fight for equality had to be fought on multiple fronts: economic, social, and political.
Okay, so we've got this incredible legacy of resilience, innovation, and a deep commitment to community. But I'm also thinking about the modern parallels here. Like, are there any lessons from this era that we can apply to the challenges facing marginalized communities today?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I think the answer is a resounding yes, because even though the context has changed, the fundamental principles of self-reliance, collective action, and the pursuit of economic justice are timeless.
So if you were to distill it down to a few key takeaways, what would you say are the most important lessons we can learn from this era of Black economic empowerment?
Well, I think one of the most important takeaways is the power of supporting minority-owned businesses. Just like during the post-Reconstruction era, these businesses often face unique challenges and systemic barriers. By consciously choosing to support them, we can contribute to building a more equitable and just economy.
It's about putting our money where our values are right, voting with our wallets.
Exactly. And it's not just about spending money. It's about mentorship, advocacy, and creating opportunities for these businesses to thrive. It's about recognizing that economic empowerment is essential for social progress.
Another lesson that really stands out to me is the importance of community resilience. These organizations weren't just about individual success, they were about collective uplift.
Absolutely. They understood that they were stronger together, that they could achieve more by pooling their resources and supporting each other. And that's a lesson that's relevant to all of us, no matter what challenges we're facing.
Whether it's economic hardship, social injustice, or even just the everyday struggles of life, we can draw strength from these stories of resilience and find hope in the power of collective action.
It's about building bridges, supporting each other, and working together to create a better future. And I think that's a powerful message to carry with us as we move forward.
It really is. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, from the challenges and setbacks to the triumphs and lasting legacies of Black economic empowerment after Reconstruction. Until next time.